Hello learners, I am Dr. Praveen Babar. I am working with Jawaharlal Nehru University as Deputy Librarian. Today we will be discussing about the library legislation implemented in various Indian states. As to introduce that library legislation in public library or the public library acts have been enacted in various states of the country, but majorly up to 1990s, it was implemented in 10 major states. It was Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Manipur, Kerala, West Bengal, Haryana, Mizoram, and Goa. Up till now, there has been almost 21 states which have enacted or implemented the library legislation in their states. The basic provision of a public library system is envisaged in these acts, which includes provision of free access of reading and learning material. Then we have establishment of institutional structure, advisory boards to provide guidance of the policy making, decision making, finance, its recruitment, feedback system, and other implementations. We will be today discussing in this session the five major states where the legislation has been implemented. The first one is the Tamil Nadu. It was called as Madras Public Library Act, which came in 1948. Then we have Andhra Pradesh, the Hyderabad's Public Library Act, which came in 1955, and as a result of state reorganization, it was merged in Andhra Pradesh Public Library Act 1960. Then after that we have the Karnataka Public Library Act, which came in 1965. Fourth one is the Maharashtra. It was known as Kolhapur Public Library Act, which was passed in 1945. After state's reorganization, the state of Kolhapur was merged with the Maharashtra state, and the Maharashtra Public Library Act was formed in 1967 and it came into being. Finally, we will be also discussing in this session the West Bengal Public Library Act, which came in 1979. So the first act which we'll be discussing is about the Madras Public Libraries Act of 1948, and it was first of its kind in the independent India. This act provided basis of the public library system in a erstwhile composite Madras state, which was before 1956, and then it became Tamil Nadu state later on. The silent features of this act were that the act facilitates the establishment of the public libraries in the state. The act had the provision to constitute the state library authority for the purpose of advising the government on such matters relating to the libraries as they refer to it. The act has the provision to appoint a director of public libraries, and from the year 1972 a separate department was created for this particular purpose. The act had a constitution of local library authorities, and one for the city of Madras and one for each district. The district library officers is the ex officio secretary of the local library authority. Each local library authority was provisioned to levy the library cess in the form of the surcharge on the property tax or house tax at the rate of 5 paise per rupee, that was defined under this Madras Public Library Act. The government gave each local library authority, except the Madras, a matching grant of the amount of the library cess collected. In addition to this, the Connemara Public Library of Madras was treated as the state central library under the Tamil Nadu. And there was a declaration that the libraries are eligible for government aid all over. The Act, amended under the Section 9 of the Press and Registration of Books Act of 1867, under the Central Act of 25 of 1867, to the effect that every printer shall deliver the 5 copies of each book to the state government, out of which 4 will be deposited in the Central Library, Madras. That was being provision. So these were the silent features of the Madras Public Library Act of 1948, which came into being. Next is the Andhra Pradesh Public Libraries Act, which came later in 1960, and it was basically formed in 1956, which comprised the Andhra's area of composite Madras state and Telangana state area of Hyderabad state. It also was included, the Madras Public Library Act was in force in Andhra area earlier in 1956. So there were a lot of administrative problems which were bound to be there when 2 separate acts are in operation in one state. To clear this problem, both the acts were amalgamated, modified and brought up to date as Andhra Pradesh Library Act of 1960. This was how the AP Andhra Pradesh Public Library Act came into being in 1960. And later it was amended. It had amendments, many amendments in 1964, then in 1969, and then later in 1987. And after that, in 1988-89, a major amendment was there, and such major amendment resulted into the Constitution of Andhra Pradesh Granthalaya Parishad. Andhra Pradesh Granthalaya Parishad was constituted with the State Library Authority as the apex body. This act has the major improvement over the Madras Act, and it had lot of salient features. Some were similar to the Madras Act but had many changes. The major salient features of this act were that it had the Constitution of Andhra Pradesh Granthalaya Parishad, which I told, with the nominated body by the government as apex body with the statutory powers and functions. Then it had the Constitution of Directorate of Public Libraries to direct, supervise and control the public library system. The Andhra Pradesh Library Act had the Constitution of City or Zilla Granthalaya Samsthans also, through nomination of the chairman and the members by the government. So there it was on the 3 levels, and the 4th level was librarians of the city, district, central libraries will act as the ex officio secretaries of the city and Zilla Granthalaya Samitis. This act has the provision to collect the cess also, and the Madras Act had up to 5 paise per rupee. It was now provision to 8 paise per rupee as surcharge on the house tax and property tax collected, which will be collected by the local bodies. The payment of establishment charges of the staff working in the city, Zilla Granthalaya Samsthans by the government will be also enacted. Granting in aid of private libraries by government and city Zilla Granthalaya Samsthan was also constituted. So these were the major silent features which came in Andhra Pradesh Public Library Act of 1960. Moving ahead to the Karnataka Public Library Act of 1965, the Karnataka Act was one of the good acts so far enacted, paved the way for the statewide network of the public libraries in the Karnataka state. It comprised of the areas from Bombay, Karnataka, Kanikata area. At that time it was known as Bombay Kanikata area, which is also known as the old Mysore area, then Hyderabad Karnataka area, Madras Karnataka area and Korg area. These were all comprised of the Karnataka Public Library Act. The silent features of the Act, this Karnataka Public Library Act, were that it provisioned for a state library and the authority in the form of the corporate body with ministry in charge of education will be the chairman. The members are drawn from different segments of the society in this act. And there was a provision for creating an independent department of public libraries with a professional as its head. So it had provisioned that a department of public libraries will be working independently with the professionals. This was a major thing, that it provisioned that the establishment of state central library at the apex of the public library system in the Karnataka state. The act also constituted for the local library authorities for the cities and districts. It also provisioned for setting up the advisory committee for branch and village library services, and there was provision being kept for the centralized technical processing, which was not earlier there in other acts. So it has another provision of centralized technical processing, provision of technical centralized units like copyright collection of the state library for the blind, state bibliographical bureau. So these components were added in this act to make further enhancement. The provision of the levy of the library cess, which is there in all other acts also, was in the form of the surcharge on all possible taxable units of the state revenue. So they broadened their aspect and they provisioned to all possible taxable units of the state revenues. The district library authority will get the annual grant from the state government and 3% of the land revenue it had. Also provision for the creation of the state library service, bestowing upon its employees for the benefit and the privileges as are available in other state government servants. So the provision was made for having the government employees under the state library service board. So these were the salient features the Karnataka Library Act had. Moving ahead to the Maharashtra Public Library Act of 1967, it was constituted with the three areas of Western Maharashtra, Marathwada, Vidarbha, and by eliminating the princely states like Kolhapur in the year of 1960. Even though there were efforts for the library legislation from 1940s onward in Maharashtra, it could not succeed up to the year 1967. It enacted the main silent features of this act were that, similar to other features, that it had the constitution of state library council by the government. Minister of Education shall be the ex officio president of the council. The council will advise the state government on all matters connected with the amendment of this act. The act has the constitution of a separate department of libraries and the appointment of professional as its director. That was also provisioned. Then it has the establishment of state central library as a divisional library for each division was also being provisioned in this act of Maharashtra. The Maharashtra Public Library Act had the constitution of a district library committee for every district. The chairman and the education committee of the Zilla Parishad functioning in the district will be the ex officio president of the committee that was being formulated. And in case of the committee of a greater Bombay, the chairman of the education committee of the the municipal corporation shall be the ex officio president of the committee. It also provisioned for the establishment of Maharashtra State Library Service and to treat all the members of such service as the government servants. So we can see that all the acts have made the members, the employees as the government servants under all available acts. There was a difference in this act that there was no library cess. The government shall contribute to the library fund. It was provision that the government will fund the will provide the library fund every year. A sum of not less than 25 lakh rupees was provisioned under the act. The government may give the special grants to library funds as and when required. Grant in aid to public libraries organize the voluntary organizations. That was also provision that voluntary organizations can also grant to the public libraries voluntarily. So these were the salient features of the Madras, the Maharashtra Public Library Act of 1967. Moving ahead, next Library Act was instituted in 1979, known as the West Bengal Libraries Act. There had been a gap of almost a decade when a Library Act came. As we can see, the earlier Library Act came in 1967 and the West Bengal Library Act came in 1979. It was more and more replica of Madras Act only. But the unique features of the Act, there was a conscious absenceness of the library cess in it. The state government will be meeting the expenses on the maintenance of libraries from the exchequer. In fact, the Maharashtra Library Act also didn't have the provisions, but it was, consciously made the library cess absence in this particular act. And as I told, the salient features were somehow different, and these included that the constitution of a state library council with minister of charge of library service as its chairman for advising the government on the matters of the public library system was provisioned. Then the representative from the employees of the libraries will be the member in the state library council. That was also provisioned. The act had a constitution of a department of libraries to supervise and direct the matters of public. It also constituted for the local library authority for each district, and the district magistrate of the district shall be the ex officio chairman of the local library authority. That was provisioned. Then there was a provision for constitution of executive council for local library authority, which is LLA. The government was empowered to appoint district library officers and district librarians in the district. The government, after constitution, with the consultation with the authority, provision was made that to place the district libraries in charge of as the district librarians. These district librarians shall manage all the library affairs subject to the control of the authority. The financial management for local libraries by the local library authority was provisioned. To augment the funding position, the contribution from gifts and other income from endowments were being taken. Grants from the government for central maintenance of libraries for any special purpose was also provisioned. The amount of collected from local library authorities under the act or the rules were made. The act provides the funds by the state government in the form of annual grants to local library authorities was provisioned under this act. So these were the major 5 acts being available after the independence. And if we compare these 5 acts, we can see that the Andhra Pradesh, as it was the first one, had total of 4,000 libraries, and the level of the libraries which were included were 1 state central library, 6 regional libraries. There were 1426 branch libraries, 4 mobile libraries, and 344 village libraries, and 24 aided libraries in total, which were provisioned under the Libraries Act of Andhra Pradesh. And if we compare the Karnataka, it had been 2700 libraries. and one state central library was there, 15 central city central library, 20 district central libraries, 392 branch libraries, 10 grant in aid libraries, and 2140 other kind of libraries were being in under the Karnataka Libraries Act. Maharashtra, if we come to, it's a big state with 5,900 libraries, one state library, five divisional libraries, eight district libraries, 31 district public libraries, 259 taluk libraries, 5,589 other type of libraries. Later on, the Tamil Nadu library also had near to 4,000 libraries, one state central library, 20 district libraries, 1538 branch libraries, 7 mobile libraries, and 2,500 village libraries were included under the Tamil Nadu. Finally, the West Bengal also had 4,000 libraries with one state library, 6 regional libraries, 1629 libraries under the Zilla Parishad, and 2,400 aided libraries to compare the first 5 states of having the Public Library Act. So, let's sum up what we have through these 5 state Public Library Acts. These Public Library Acts were passed in these 5 states have been implemented throughout, and general observations of these acts can be or we can infer from these acts that a library system was purely formed with necessary administrative infrastructure from state to the district level. These all acts provided a pyramidal structure, pyramid kind of structure from state, regional, district, subdivisional, taluk, and block village libraries, and the funds available were at the disposal of the system through these acts. Arrangements were made through statutory provisions for a perennial source of income through the library cess and state governments under all these 5 acts. The essential services like use of newspaper and magazines, lending services, and reference services were introduced gradually in these acts. Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka state provided mobile library services to the villages located at all the corners of the state as it was provisioned under the Library Act. Then a public library service fees for all levels regardless of age, sex, religion, language, or social status of the citizens were made. It appears that the states of Manipur, Kerala, Haryana, Mizoram, and Goa did not had that kind of implementation due to the administrative reasons, but later on it was provisioned, and however they are rendering services with excellent excellent and existing facilities their under their states. So I hope you have understood these 5 states of where the legislation, the Library Act was provisioned. So thank you so much.